I don't know about you, but I think the marketing industry accidentally created a generation of addicts. Entrepreneurs addicted to tactics. The next funnel, the next agency, the next AI tool, the next secret. And if you own a service business, you sell by appointment, a consult, a demo, a strategy call, some kind of conversation where a real person has to raise their hand, book a time, show up and decide to work with you. But growth still feels way harder, way more random than it should, then this video is for you, especially if you feel stuck in what I call operator mode. Now, how do you know if you're in operator mode? It's quite simple. You can't really leave. You might take a vacation, but you bring your business with you. You check Stripe, you check the calendar, you check the pipeline. You wonder if calls are still coming in. You wonder if the team is still following up. You wonder if the leads slowed down the moment you stop paying attention. And if you mentally checked out for 2 weeks, not just physically left, but actually stopped carrying the business in your head, you know what would probably happen. Things would slow down. Some things would slip. Other things, a few things might fall apart. And not because you have a bad business, not because your offer is broken, not because you're bad at what you do. In fact, usually the opposite is true. You're really good at what you do. You've got clients, you have revenue, you have proof. Your business works. But deep down, you have this nagging feeling that growth is still too random. Some months are great. Leads come in, calls get booked, sales happen, cash piles up. You start thinking, hey, maybe you finally got this thing figured out. Then the next month, everything slows down. The calls dry up. The pipeline gets quiet. The energy changes. And suddenly you're asking the same questions again. Was it the market, the ads, the algorithm? Was it the offer? Was it me? And before you know it, you're back to chasing another tactic, another funnel, another campaign, another agency, another AI tool, another strategy, another thing that might finally make growth predictable. But after almost 20 years of helping businesses grow, I've become convinced of something. You're probably not missing another tactic. You're missing a machine, an ecosystem where growth happens predictably and repeatedly. And in this video, I want to show you the model that we use to make growth less random, less like throwing spaghetti against the wall and more predictable. I call it the predictable growth map. I don't mean that theoretically. I have seen tiny changes create massive outcomes. I once watched a single word completely change the results of a campaign and take a company from losing money for 6 months straight to over $100 million in under 2 years. One word. I've watched my client Cole go from crossing his fingers with every ad dollar he spent to generating $772,000 from a single campaign. I've watched a husband and wife dog training business go from around $20,000 a month to more than $64,000 a month in about 90 days. Same service, same market, same real demand. What changed was not that they magically found some secret tactic. What changed was the machine. Stay with me. I'll show you exactly what I mean. First, quick context on who I am and why this matters to me. I spent almost 20 years helping businesses grow, got my start in the photography industry, and then I moved into marketing campaigns, launches, funnels, sales systems, growth strategy. I've worked inside companies like Agora Financial doing billions of dollars a year. I helped grow an agency by the name of Strike Point Media from 0 to 7 figures, then to 25 million a year. I've seen webinars produce millions. I've seen launches produce hundreds of thousands of dollars in a single week. I've seen service businesses double and triple their monthly revenue. But the most important lesson came before any of that. When I started my first business, a photography studio, I sat down with a mentor. I had all the normal questions. What gear did I need? How should I price? Where do I get clients? How do I market? How do I grow? But he only gave me 2 pieces of advice. The first was, go take 100,000 photos. In other words, master your craft. If you're going to sell something, be great at the thing that you sell. Then he handed me a book. It's called The E-Myth Revisited. And that book introduced me to a very important concept. Businesses create freedom when they're built on systems. That year, I actually hired an E-Myth coach. At the time, it felt like an outrageous investment. In fact, my wife and I got in a pretty heated argument about it, about spending the money. Thankfully, she trusted me. And that year became my first 6-figure year in business. Had tried a number of things before that, had never really gotten traction until that investment. And from that point on, I became obsessed with systems. Systems for operation, systems for delivery, systems for project management, for client experience. But here's the funny part. Even after building systems everywhere else, I still treated marketing like it was magic. Creativity lived over here and systems lived over there. Marketing felt like art, not engineering. And that belief cost me years. I'm guessing it might be costing you right now. Because here's what happens when you believe that marketing is magic. You start looking for the magic ingredient, the campaign, the funnel, the hook, the hire, the platform, the tool, the agency. And the entire marketing world, by the way, trains you to think that way. Because the marketing world mostly shows you the winners. Look at this funnel, look at this ad, look at this launch. But it rarely shows you the graveyard. It rarely shows you the campaigns that quietly failed, the funnels that didn't convert, the agencies that didn't fix it, the strategies that made sense on paper but barely moved the needle in the business. I saw probably one of the most disgusting examples of this years ago in the trading industry. There was this self-proclaimed guru showing how he had turned $5,000 in his account into over $100,000. But he left out one very important detail, because what he never mentioned were the 50 other accounts that he blew up getting there. He showed the one winner and conveniently left out the 49 losers. And marketing often does the exact same thing. It celebrates the lottery winners and quietly ignores everyone else who bought the ticket. I wish it weren't true. I know it for a fact because I've seen behind the curtain. For every campaign that became a case study, there were dozens that didn't. For every funnel that crushed, there were 10 that barely moved. To be honest, that really bothered me. Always has. Because if the tactic were really the answer, why couldn't we reliably repeat it? Why would one webinar work and another almost identical webinar flop? Why would one business explode while another business would implode with the same agency, same software, same strategy, and it would barely grow using the same exact strategy? And eventually, as an entrepreneur, as a marketer, I finally discovered the problem. You see, I had been chasing lightning in a bottle instead of asking, how do I build the power plant? And that one question completely changed my perspective on the problem. And that's when the solution showed up. It had been there all along, ever since my mentor had handed me a copy of that book more than a decade before, because I finally understood what separated entrepreneurs who build extraordinary businesses from everyone else. It's not just creativity. It's not just work ethic. It's not just a better tactic. It has everything to do with how they approach growth in the first place. More specifically, it's how they define their job. Most entrepreneurs think their job is to grow the business, get more leads, close more sales, approve the marketing, fix the website, hire the team, solve the problem, put out the fire. And if you do that long enough, yes, you can build a successful business, but you also build yourself a very demanding job. A high-paying job, maybe, a meaningful job, hopefully, but still a job. Because every important thing still rolls uphill to you. Every campaign depends on you. Every month starts to feel like starting over. Every slowdown becomes your problem. Every decision waits for your input. That is operator mode. And operator mode can get you clients. It can get you revenue. It can get you proof. It can even get you some momentum. But it cannot create real freedom. Because freedom does not come from working harder inside the business. Freedom comes from building a business that can grow without depending on your constant attention. And that requires a different job. It requires a flywheel. And that's why the entrepreneur's job is not to grow the business. The entrepreneur's job is to build the machine, because once the machine exists, the machine grows the business creates wealth, and wealth is what creates freedom. Operators ask, what should I do next? While architects ask, what should the machine do next? That's the shift. Operators run businesses while architects build machines that run like flywheels. So do you want to know the real problem? The problem, by the way, that when you solve it makes everything else easier. The problem is not that you need more ideas of what to do. I'm sure you've got a backlog of ideas a mile long. The problem is that you don't have a clear enough map of the machine to know exactly what move matters next, what's most important right now. So everything feels urgent. Everything feels like it might work. Everything feels like it might be the thing. Should we run ads? Should we post more? Should we rebuild the website? Should we hire a new salesperson? Should we launch a new funnel, try AI, change the offer, start a podcast? And really the answer to all those questions is the same answer. Maybe, but also maybe not. Because the one truth that you know better than anyone else, and that is that every business is different. Every business is constrained in a different place. And if you fix the wrong part of the machine, you can work incredibly hard and still not grow. That's why generic advice is so dangerous. It gives everyone the same prescription, even though every machine is constrained in a different place, requires different stuff. You do not need more things to try. You need to know what matters next. And that starts with diagnosis. Not motivation, not random activity, not another marketing project, diagnosis. And it's why I take the same approach in every company I own or work with. Step one, before I come up with any ideas or strategies or do anything, is always to find the single biggest growth lever. Want to see it? Because this is how I find the single biggest growth lever in any company I own or work with. Awesome. Let's dive in. It starts with the model, which is called the wealth machine. And the wealth machine is what creates predictable growth. I use it to see what's missing or broken in any business. There are 3 parts. And when all 3 parts are in place and working in harmony, growth just happens. And when growth happens, you get 2 things. You get money and you get freedom, which is why most of us went into business in the first place, not to own a job, but to create an asset that generates wealth. So let's start with the first part. This is called your path to purchase. This is the map of how your stranger becomes a client, not in theory, but in reality. How do people first become aware of you and who you are? What causes them to pay attention? What makes them raise their hand? What happens after that? How are they nurtured? When do they book? Why do they show up? It's all these little steps between the moment where somebody becomes a lead to where they become a client. And most business owners have not actually mapped this out. They have pieces of it in their head. They might say that there's a bunch of different ways that somebody can become a client in their business. They've got a website over here, some referrals over there, a lead form, a calendar link, some follow-up text, some emails, maybe even just them or some team member who just knows what to do. So let me ask you a quick question about this before we go any further. Have you ever actually mapped this out end to end? From leads to client on one page, yes or no? Be honest. And if the answer is no, it's no judgment. It's just the first clue about why growth might feel random. If you've not mapped this out, or if there's a bunch of different ways that somebody can become a client in your business, then it can't really be measured. Because if it's not mapped, it can't be measured. And if it can't be measured, it can't really be improved. So that's why the first thing that we want to do here is actually map your path to purchase. It always starts with the same thing. Every business, it starts with leads. And we got to figure out, how do leads come into the business? And then if you think of your business like an assembly line, like a conveyor belt, like a factory that turns attention into clients. So every business starts the same with leads, they end with clients, but there are some steps in between that we need to map out. We need to map your path to purchase. So all we have to do is fill in the steps on the assembly line. What happens here and here and here and here and here and here until you take leads and turn them into clients. Because without it, you're trying to improve growth without a clear map of how growth actually happens in your business. I saw this with a client of mine named Brandon. Brandon thought he needed a better CRM. He figured the answer was another tool. But once we mapped the path to purchase, he discovered something different.
I thought I was just getting a CRM, but they have been a game changer for our business. It is more than just a CRM to keep me organized and do all our automations and emails and all the fun stuff. They're a team, and their team is always there to support us, always there to help us. And I can't tell you how much weight they have taken off my shoulders. And is not just there to help you execute, but also help you grow and scale, which is exactly what GrowthMap has done.
What he needed next was not another piece of software. He needed to see how growth actually happened in his business so he could think strategically about it. Today, he's spending more on marketing than ever before, running more webinars, spending more on ads, by the way, because it's working, growing faster and sleeping better because the business is no longer depends on him remembering every little thing. That is what the map does. It turns anxiety into architecture. All right, so that's the first part of the wealth machine. Ready for part 2? Because once the path to purchase is mapped, the second part is understanding the system. So if the path to purchase are the steps that someone has to go through to go from a lead to a client, the system is the thing that moves those people along that pipeline. I want you to think of it like the human body. Our bodies are made up of all these different systems. The skeletal system, the nervous system, the cardiovascular system, all working together. If one of those systems is off, the whole body might feel off. But if they're working together, then you live a healthy, vibrant, thriving life. Same thing is true with your business. And every appointment-based service business has the same 6 systems working together. Now, Before we walk through these 6 systems together, I want you to do something with me. Imagine you and I are sitting down over a cup of coffee. We pop open the hood of your business together. As I walk through each one of these, I want you to grade yourself. Scale of 1 to 4. A 4 means this thing is dialed in. It's documented. It runs without you. You can measure it. A 1 means, and let's be honest, it doesn't really exist or it's totally broken. Okay, so I want you to grab a pen and paper. I've actually got this all laid out. I'll make sure there's a link to this PDF below the video here so that you can grab this, print it out if you'd like, or you can grab a scratch piece of paper so that you're not having to just keep a tally in your head. Because by the end of this, you're going to see something about your business that most owners never see. You're going to see exactly where the machine is leaking. And what you'll notice here, you see up at the top, what we have here, we've got your path to purchase. And again, remember, the job of the system below is to move people along that path to purchase. All right, let's jump into system 1, which is the traffic system. And your traffic system has one job. It's to get more eyeballs. This is how the right people discover you. How do you get in front of more of the right kinds of people? So here's your first score. If the right people are discovering you every single day from a system you control, not just referrals and luck, that's a 4. If you're mostly waiting for the phone to ring, just relying on referrals, or it's like a trickle, that's probably a 1, maybe a 2. So rate yourself a 1 to a 4. Let's say we're a 2. I would just put a 2 down in here. Most owners I meet are probably around a 2. But whatever your number is, I want you to write it down, okay? System number 2 is your lead gen system. So once you have somebody's attention, what's the compelling reason, that's a hand, for them to actually raise their hand and opt in? They fill out a form on your website, reply to your ads, those kind of things. So if strangers are consistently raising their hand and you know your numbers, you know your cost per lead, your leads per week, that's a steady flow, that's probably a 4. If it's just a contact form on your website and you're crossing your fingers, again, probably a 1. A 1 to a 4, I want you to write that down. Let's say here we're feeling like maybe we're a 1. All right, system 3, once they've raised their hand, now you've got your engagement system. And your engagement system, just like all the other systems, as you guessed it, has one job, and that is to get leads into conversation. So once they've raised their hand, can you get them to lean in? Can you get them to start a conversation? And be honest here, because this is where most businesses leak the most. If every new lead gets a response quickly within minutes and a conversation starts, regardless of what's happening in the business or what time of day or week it is, that's probably a 4. If leads just kind of sitting there until somebody remembers to check the pipeline and follow up, probably a 1. Let's assume you've got this one dialed, always area for improvement. Maybe you feel good about it. Let's say it's a 3 out of 4. Okay. The next system, system 4. This one is critical. It is your nurture system. Again, your nurture system has one job alone, and that is, how do we build trust before the sale? We want to build trust with that nurture system. And the best way that I know to do that is to get them to binge on content, because bingers are buyers. So if the leads who are coming into your system aren't ready to buy today, are they hearing from you automatically? Are they getting content? Are you building trust with them for weeks and months without anyone having to lift a finger? That's probably a 4. If they didn't book, so they're just gone and they kind of sit in the database on some list somewhere, that's probably a 1. I want you to go ahead and rate it again. Often I'll get a response from entrepreneurs that their nurture system is just totally non-existent. It maybe just relies on them and their team doing manual follow-up. If that's the case, let's say it's a 1. All right, so that brings us to system number 5. The next system is our sales system, which has one job, and that is to get prospects pre-sold before they see your offer, meaning they're showing up buying. You're not having to do a hard selling or closing. So they are showing up pre-sold. So if your prospects are showing up on time, show rate numbers are good, you know your numbers, you know your close rate, they're showing up already trusting you. You're hearing things like, hey, you had me at hello, I was already sold before I showed up. That's probably a 4. If it feels like a coin flip every time you have an appointment, you're not even sure if they're going to show or when they do, you're often fighting over price and things, that's probably a 1. So I want you to go ahead and rate yourself here. Let's say we feel really good about our sales and it's a 3. Okay, the final system, last one, number 6 is your enrollment system. This is where the sales process ends and your client success and client delivery begins. And this has one job, which is to set yourself up for success, to be able to have happy clients that refer you more and more leads into your system. This is how we create a flywheel, right? So this enrollment system really just has one job, which is to collect the cash and get the client started on the right foot. So if a new client's first week with you is super smooth, you know exactly what happens. So if that transition is effortless, you or your team are able to make an offer during a sales appointment on a call and go straight into collecting that payment, getting them into the system and getting them started right away with really solid expectations, that's probably a 4. If it's a handoff that's kind of duct taped together, or you're chasing leads down after they say yes, but you kind of are in this purgatory land, that's probably a 1, or you might be somewhere in between. So I want you to go ahead and rate yourself on a 1 through 4. Let's say we feel really solid about this one. This one is actually a 4. Now, if you notice on this kind of one-page blueprint here, you can map your entire business on this one page. There's 2 boxes that are left empty, and that's for a reason. Because if we take this whole system, we start with the pipeline, right? Because the path to purchase is how we turn attention into clients and the steps that someone has to go through. Then we have the system, and the purpose of the system is to move people through that pipeline. And what you'll see is this is broken into kind of 2 main jobs. One, we need to capture attention. That's the marketing side of things. How do we go and get in front of more of the right kinds of people and generate leads? Then once we have those leads, how do we actually convert that attention? How do we convert those leads into clients that pay us, that stay with us forever and refer us and become our best salespeople out there, our raving fans? Well, in order to do that, we need 2 different, very specific kinds of content in our business. We need our authority assets and our conversion assets. Because in any system, there's a few key building blocks. There are the processes, which are kind of like, what do the humans do? Then there's maybe any sort of automation or code or AI. What do the robots do? And then there's the content that goes into the system. So like with your traffic system, you might have your website. You might have some ads. For your lead gen system, you might have some lead magnets. For your nurture, and those are all authority assets, by the way. In your conversion side of things, you might have a video like this. You might have some marketing education, some long-form YouTube videos. You might have some sales collateral and PDFs and things that go into your convert attention side of your system. So once we have those leads, how do we turn them into clients predictably and consistently? Here's the thing. Most owners do not have 6 systems and 2 strategic types of content. They have 6 piles of activity and a whole bunch of I shoulds or to-dos in their backlog. You know, they've got some content, some referrals, some ads, maybe some emails, some DMs, some follow-ups, some software, and certainly all of them have some good intentions. And because all of that activity is disconnected, you know, maybe one system overperforms while another one leaks out. And then the owner concludes, these leads suck. I need more leads. I need better leads. Which, by the way, I almost never believe that, because the truth is those same leads are buying from someone else. So it's not the leads that are broken. It's the machine that is. And if you scored low on the engagement or nurture systems a minute ago, listen to this. That was the story with Teddy and Susie. They own a dog training business in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, working out of the back of a garden center that's been in the family for a long time. Great people, fantastic service, real demand. They had already tried switching software, was working with multiple agencies. They already believed in automation. They even had a VA that had helped them build all of it. But growth still felt harder than it should. They were manually following up with people, trying to remember every conversation, responding whenever they had time, and working incredibly hard. And still wondering why growth felt so inconsistent. Their constraint was not that they needed magically better leads. The issue was engagement and nurture. Attention was not cleanly moving through the machine. So we simply rebuilt how attention flowed through their business, built the engagement system, which gave them faster responses, added in the nurture system for consistent follow-up, and conversations started happening sooner. Fewer opportunities were slipping through the cracks. And within about 90 days, they went from about $20,000 a month to more than $64,000 and their biggest month ever. But my favorite part of the whole story was not the revenue. My favorite part is what it created for them. Susie she finally got her time back. More time serving customers instead of chasing follow-up tasks. And more importantly, she got time with her son who's got special needs. And that's what the machine does. It buys back your time. It gives you back your attention. But it's one thing to do that once. It's another thing to be able to do that on repeat. So if you're ready for it, that brings us to the third part, which is where growth actually compounds. We've already gone over the path to purchase and the system. Now we need to dive into growth cycles. Because here's the thing, most entrepreneurs think that growth comes from finding the next big breakthrough, the one funnel, the one launch, the one ad, the one hire, the one strategy. And sure, sometimes breakthroughs do happen. Sometimes one change really does unlock a major result. But real business growth usually compounds a different way. You make the machine a little bit better every 6 weeks for years. That's how valuable businesses are built. Not by swinging for a home run every month, but by finding the biggest constraint, strengthening that part of the machine, measuring what changed, and then running the next cycle. So if you grab a piece of paper, you can just draw a little circle here, and we want to look at this kind of growth cycle or this growth flywheel. The first step, we want to find the constraint. In our case, it was what was that lowest number when we ran that assessment. And then once we've found that constraint, we choose the priority. I love the word priority because in my mind, I always think of it meaning prior to. So prior to me doing anything else, what is the most important thing at the top of the list, or what I like to call the priority stack that I'm going to do? So if we've identified the constraint, then that should tell us what our priority is, but we still as entrepreneurs have to make the decision and choose that priority. Then, once we've chosen that priority, we've chosen that direction, that project, that activity, we go ahead and build that part of the system. Sometimes that means building a system that's non-existent. Sometimes that means fixing a broken system. Sometimes that means improving one that's already running pretty well. Regardless, we have to build the machine, right? The entrepreneur builds the machine builds the business. And then the last step when we're running these growth cycles is to measure our results. And you'll notice this works like a flywheel for a reason, because if we take any one of these parts out, if we don't find the constraint, we're going to waste our time chasing shiny objects and squirrels, right? If we don't measure results, we won't actually have the data to be able to find the constraint. You can see how all of these things work together towards a common goal, which is to compound the value and the growth in your business. Because every business has one constraint, one thing currently limiting growth more than everything else. You just found yours a minute ago. Maybe it's traffic, not enough of the right people discovering you. Maybe it's nurture. People know about you, but they're not ready to buy. Maybe it's sales. Calls are booking, but show rate's weak or conversion is weak. The point is not to fix everything at once. That's how entrepreneurs drown in projects. That's how they stay in operator mode and blend in with almost every other so-so average service business. The point is to identify that one constraint, strengthen that part of the machine, measure what changed, and run the next cycle over and over and over. That is how Cole's story happened. Before we worked together, Cole was already buying traffic, running ads, doing launches, running webinars. And from the outside, everything looked fine. He had some success, but every launch felt like a gamble. 60 to 90 days of building anticipation, spending money on ads, crossing his fingers, hoping that it would pay off. So we didn't want to just go find him magically better leads. Instead, we ran these growth cycles and we found the constraint. For him, it was how he was building trust with his leads when they were coming into his world. And so that's the part of the machine that we rebuilt. And his next launch generated over $772,000 in just 1 week. But here is the part that matters more than the number. Although the number is great, by the way. I'm not promising that you're going to make $772,000 a week. I would love that for you. But what stands out to me and what really mattered the most here was that Cole stopped hoping and he started knowing. He started knowing what created growth in his business and, more importantly, how to repeat it. And that is the shift. You stop praying, oh, I hope this works. And you start saying, oh, like that was interesting. What did we learn? What should we do next? You stop operating from anxiety and you start acting decisively from clarity. So that's the wealth machine. One clear and proven path to purchase, 6 systems and 2 types of content that turn attention into clients, and a repeatable growth process that grows your business every 6 weeks. It's what helped Brandon stop thinking he needed another tool and started seeing the strategy. It's what helped Teddy and Susie turn inconsistent follow-up into a growth system that bought back their time. And it's what helped Cole move from ad spend anxiety to a $772,000 a week. None of them found a magic tactic. They were never missing a tactic. They were missing a machine, which is true of about 98% of the service businesses out there. So here's the next step. If any of this landed with you, it's called a clarity call. And the purpose is simple. We identify where your growth is currently constrained. And if you did the scoring exercise with me a few minutes ago, bring your 6 numbers to the call because your gut told you something when you wrote down that lowest score. And on the clarity call, we find out if your gut was right. We'll map your path to purchase. We'll look at your current system, what's there, what's missing, what's broken, and we'll identify the one constraint most limiting your growth right now. Then I'll walk you through the next 2 or 3 moves that I would make if I owned your business. Not theory, not motivation, not a pile of generic marketing ideas, some practical next steps. And just to be clear, this is not some sales call, no pitch. There's literally nothing to buy on the call. My goal is simply for you to leave more clear than you came in. Because the real danger is not that your business falls apart tomorrow. The real danger is probably more subtle and quieter than that. It's 6 more months of good months, bad months, 6 more months of wondering what to try next, 6 more months of chasing tactics without actually knowing what's broken, 6 more months of throwing spaghetti against the wall, carrying the business in your head, being physically present with your family, but mentally still checking the pipeline or checked out. And let's be honest, you don't deserve that. Your clients, your team, your family, they don't deserve that. You did not build this business to become its most important employee. You built it for freedom, for ownership, for impact, for wealth, for your family, for a life where the business supports what matters most instead of quietly consuming it. And that kind of freedom does not come from just chasing the next tactic. It comes from building the machine. So if you are ready to stop guessing, if you're ready to find the constraint, if you are ready to start thinking like an architect, just click the link in the description, or you can head over to growthmapcall.com. Again, that's growthmapcall.com. Just answer a few short questions, book a clarity call, and let's map the next few moves together. Because we both know you already have a business that pays the bills. Now it's time to build the machine that actually pays you back. Because as the entrepreneur, we both know you have one job, right? And that is to build the machine. Build the machine. Build the machine. The machine builds the business creates wealth, and wealth creates freedom. We'll see you on the call.